For decades, Bobby Womack carried both the glory of Sam Cooke's mentorship and the weight of one of soul music's most shocking scandals, his marriage to Cooke's widow soon after the singer's death. At 70, just before his own passing, Womack finally broke his silence, opening up about Sam Cooke, the controversy that nearly destroyed him, and the truth he had held back for half a lifetime. The details will surely surprise you. When the 6-year-old met his mentor. In the early 1950s, Bobby Womack was a small boy with an unusually powerful voice. Music had already begun shaping his life inside his family's gospel group, the Womack Brothers, who sang in churches around Cleveland. But nothing prepared him for the moment when he would cross paths with Sam Cooke, a meeting that would change the entire course of his life. In 1953, the Womack Brothers were given the chance to open for Sam Cooke and his celebrated group, the Soul Stirrers, at a Baptist church concert. Bobby was just 9 years old, the youngest of the family, with little idea of how important the evening would become. Before the show, Cooke leaned down to the boy and joked, "If I let you open up the show, you're not going to steal the show, are you?" The remark was playful, but it carried a challenge. When Bobby sang, the audience erupted in excitement. His natural talent stunned the crowd and even surprised Cooke himself, who realized that this child was more than just a cute addition to a family act. Cooke's encouragement during that night created an instant bond. Bobby later recalled how deeply it affected him to have someone of Cooke's stature notice him. For a boy still learning what it meant to be a performer, the attention of such a respected gospel star felt like a blessing. Cooke became more than an admired figure on a stage. He became someone Bobby trusted as a guide, someone who saw potential in him that others had not yet recognized. Over the following years, the connection only deepened. Cooke stayed in touch with the Womack brothers and watched their growth. By 1961, after Cooke had launched his own record label, SAR, he invited the young group to join. For Bobby, still in his teens, this was a life-altering decision. Signing with Cooke meant stepping into a world of professional music, recording studios, and national exposure. It also meant leaving behind the safety of school and childhood routines. Bobby and his brothers dropped out of school to follow the path that Cooke laid before them. Looking back, Bobby often admitted that this decision turned his world upside down. One day, he was a boy in a modest neighborhood, and the next, he was learning about contracts, touring schedules, and the harsh realities of the music business. Yet, because Cooke was behind them, the Womack brothers felt they had a mentor who would not let them down. Bobby frequently emphasized that Cooke taught him lessons that shaped not only his singing, but also his understanding of life. He learned about phrasing, stage presence, and the importance of originality. But more importantly, he learned that believing in oneself was the foundation of any career. Let's tell you how decades later, Bobby described Cooke as the single most influential figure in his early life. He never forgot the playful challenge before that first performance, or the way Cooke opened doors that once seemed impossible. Walking in Sam's shoes. For Womack, Cooke was not only a mentor, but a model whose artistry helped define the very shape of his career. He openly admitted that much of what he became as a singer came directly from lessons learned by observing and working with Cooke. In one interview, Womack revealed that he owed 3/4 of his musical identity to Sam, and that half of his phrasing as a vocalist came directly from Cooke's influence. Such a statement captured both the depth of Cooke's impact and Womack's willingness to acknowledge the debt he carried throughout his life. Womack carefully watched how Cooke shaped a song, how he delivered emotion, and how he controlled the balance between passion and restraint. As Cooke moved from gospel to secular music, he encouraged the Womack brothers to do the same. This was no small transition. Leaving gospel roots behind meant stepping into a marketplace that demanded new sounds and new approaches. Yet under Cooke's mentorship, the brothers embraced the challenge. He produced their recordings on his SAR label and pushed them to experiment with material that could reach broader audiences. By 1962, this guidance bore fruit when the group, now performing as the Valentinos, released Lookin' for a Love. The song quickly gained attention, climbing the charts and establishing the group as rising figures in the rock and roll and rhythm and blues landscape. Lookin' for a Love was more than a hit. It symbolized the successful transformation that Cooke had envisioned for his protégés. The record fused gospel-trained voices with modern rhythms, delivering a sound that carried both spiritual energy and commercial appeal. For Bobby, the success confirmed that Cooke's approach was not only inspiring but effective. It gave him confidence that his mentor's blueprint could indeed be trusted. Years later, when reflecting on his career, Bobby Womack often tied his achievements back to this period. He did not claim independence from Cooke, but rather acknowledged the continuity between them. In his view, to walk in Sam's shoes was not to copy him blindly, but to learn how to step into the world with courage and authenticity. The phrasing he borrowed, the stylistic nuances he absorbed, and the opportunities Cooke provided became part of his foundation as an artist. Let's now tell you about the moment Sam introduced Bobby to a song so haunting and profound that he confessed it felt like death itself. It feels like death. Hearing a change is gonna come. Among the many moments that marked Sam and Bobby's connection, one stood out above the rest: the day Sam introduced Bobby to A Change Is Gonna Come. When Cooke first played the song privately, Womack listened intently to the haunting melody and the weight of the lyrics. The song carried a sense of inevitability, as though it was both a prophecy and a farewell. Overwhelmed, Bobby looked at his mentor and confessed, "It feels like death." The response was immediate and telling. Sam replied, "That's why I'm never going to play it in public." This short exchange revealed the enormous emotional burden Cooke himself felt when he wrote the song, and it showed how Bobby instinctively understood its gravity. The track was born out of Cooke's own experiences with racism and his awareness of the struggles faced by African Americans during the Civil Rights era. Inspired by Bob Dylan's protest songs and by personal encounters with injustice, Cooke poured his emotions into the composition. For Bobby, still a young man absorbing the lessons of artistry and life, the song's raw emotion became a defining moment of education. He realized that music could transcend entertainment. It could embody pain, hope, and a vision of change. Womack later explained that the feeling of death he sensed in the song was not only about mortality, but about the emotional finality within Cooke's voice. It was as though Sam was preparing to leave something behind, something that would speak for him even if he were no longer there. The eerie accuracy of this impression struck Bobby even harder after Cooke's untimely death in 1964. Hearing the song again in that context felt like listening to his mentor deliver his own epitaph. For Bobby, this moment reshaped how he thought about artistry. He learned that honesty in music often required exposing deep personal truth, even if it was painful. Cooke had not written A Change Is Gonna Come for commercial gain. He had written it as an expression of his own soul and as a message to a society in need of transformation. That honesty became a principle Bobby tried to carry throughout his own career. The prophetic quality of the song only grew in the years after Cooke's death. It became an anthem for the civil rights movement, adopted by activists and communities as a symbol of hope and resilience. For Womack, every time the song resurfaced, it carried him back to that private moment when he first heard it, when he felt an inexplicable chill and recognized the depth of his mentor's gift. But after Sam's tragic death, everything shifted. The bond that once felt so pure and inspiring took a controversial turn, sparking shock, whispers, and questions that never truly faded. Mourning, scandal, and scrutiny. Sam Cooke's death on December 11, 1964, shook the music world to its core. At just 33 years old, the man known as the King of Soul was shot at the Hacienda Motel in Los Angeles under circumstances that remain clouded in controversy. Official reports claimed it was a case of self-defense by the motel manager after a confrontation, but many, including Cooke's family and close friends, believed there was more to the story. Bobby Womack was on the road in 1964 when the devastating news reached him. Sam Cooke, the man who had given him a stage, a voice, and a future. For Bobby, it was more than the loss of a mentor. It felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. He described being completely devastated, unable to process that the man he looked up to like an older brother was suddenly gone. Cooke's death left a silence that could not be filled, both in Bobby's personal life and in the world of music. In the haze of grief, Bobby made a decision that would forever change the way people saw him. Just months after Cooke's death, he married Sam's widow, Barbara. To outsiders, the move was shocking and scandalous. The press branded him as the boy who married Sam Cooke's wife. Fans who once adored him now saw betrayal, unable to separate their grief for Cooke from Bobby's controversial choice. Womack insisted that it had been Barbara's idea, that she needed comfort and he needed a way to hold on to the last piece of Sam he had left. But to the public, the justification did not matter. The union was tainted from the beginning by suspicion and anger. The marriage, built in the shadows of loss, soon spiraled into chaos. What began as an attempt to find solace quickly dissolved into mistrust and heartbreak. The lowest point came when Barbara discovered that Bobby had been unfaithful with her teenage daughter, Linda. The revelation was explosive, shattering what little trust remained. In a moment of fury, Barbara grabbed a gun and shot at Bobby, forcing him to flee the house under fire. That violent scene marked the end of their marriage and forever stamped the relationship as one of the most controversial chapters in soul music history. The scandal only deepened when Linda later married Bobby's younger brother, Cecil Womack. Far from disappearing into obscurity, Cecil and Linda became a celebrated musical duo in the 1980s, recording the hit single Love Wars. For Bobby, this twist added another layer of pain and irony to an already tangled story. The family ties that once bonded them through music had turned into a source of gossip, scandal, and estrangement. Through it all, Bobby carried the weight of public scrutiny. Fans who once celebrated him for his raw voice and heartfelt performances now whispered about his personal life, often louder than they spoke about his songs. To many, he was no longer just the talented young man who had been lifted up by Sam Cooke. He was the man who had crossed a line, the figure at the center of a scandal that blurred love, grief, and betrayal. Everyone turned their eyes to Bobby, waiting for answers. Why had he married Barbara so soon after Sam's death? For years, he stayed silent, but eventually, he chose to break that silence and reveal his side of the story. A Soul Man's Reflection at 70. By the time Bobby Womack turned 70, he had lived through triumph, tragedy, and relentless controversy. His voice, though weathered, carried the weight of decades in soul music, and his reflections revealed a man finally ready to speak without hesitation about the journey that had shaped him. Just before his passing in 2014, Bobby gave interviews where he looked back not only on his own career, but also on the towering figure who had first given him a chance, Sam Cooke. In one of his final conversations, Bobby acknowledged that survival itself felt like an achievement. Years of addiction, scandal, and personal missteps had left him fragile, but he stood proud of the fact that he was still standing. "I'm speaking for all those singers who gave up," he told Pitchfork. "Marvin, Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke, Wilson Pickett, I'm gonna set the record straight." His words carried both defiance and gratitude, a statement that he had endured where many of his peers had been cut down too soon. Central to these reflections was Sam Cooke. Bobby admitted openly that much of who he became was because of Sam's mentorship. He repeated the truth he had carried all his life, that he owed most of his phrasing and style to Cooke, and that his earliest successes were born directly out of that guidance. At 70, there was no ego in his acknowledgement. Instead, there was humility and a sense of duty to remind the world of Cooke's enduring influence. But Bobby also addressed the subject that had haunted him for half a century: his marriage to Barbara Cooke. For years, silence had only fueled speculation, with fans and critics branding him the boy who had betrayed Sam's legacy. In his later years, Bobby no longer avoided the topic. He explained that the marriage had not been about exploitation or ambition, but about grief. Both he and Barbara were shattered by Sam's death, and in their pain, they clung to each other. "People thought I was wrong, but I wasn't trying to disrespect Sam," Bobby said in reflection. "I was trying to survive after losing him." Barbara was too. His words did not erase the scandal, but they gave insight into the confusion and desperation that had driven the decision. Even so, Bobby did not sugarcoat the mistakes that followed. He admitted that the relationship had collapsed under its own weight, and that his choices within it, including the betrayal with Linda Cooke, were indefensible. In his later interviews, he spoke with regret rather than excuses, acknowledging that his actions had caused lasting wounds and contributed to the anger that still followed his name. Yet what stood out in his reflections was the balance between accountability and love. For Bobby, Sam Cooke remained the defining figure of his life, No scandal, no controversy, and no missteps could erase the gratitude he felt for the man who had believed in him when he was just a boy singing in a Baptist church. Bobby's voice trembled not with fear, but with the truth of a man who had lived fully, stumbled greatly, and still found meaning in honoring the mentor who shaped his path. He also revealed that after Sam's death, his greatest battle was learning how to reclaim his own identity, a struggle that would define the next chapter of his life, rising from the shadows. After years of being defined through the lens of Sam Cooke's influence and the controversy that followed his marriage to Barbara Cooke, Bobby Womack knew he had to carve out an identity that belonged solely to him. The public's judgment weighed heavily on his career, and whispers of scandal often drowned out appreciation for his talent. To silence the critics and reclaim his respect, Bobby decided the only way forward was through the music itself. He once remarked that he had to cut some hit records if he wanted the world to see him for who he was, rather than for the shadow he lived under. This determination carried him into the 1970s, a decade that would finally allow him to rise from the stigma of his past. The turning point came with his solo recording of "Lookin' for a Love," a song he had originally performed years earlier with his brothers as part of the Valentinos. In 1974, his reimagined version topped the R&B charts and climbed into the mainstream, marking his first major triumph as an independent artist. This success was more than just numbers, it was validation. For Bobby, the song became a declaration that he was more than the protege of Sam Cooke, more than the man mired in scandal. He was a star in his own right. The song's success opened doors that had long been shut. Record labels, producers, and audiences began to see him not as an extension of Cooke's legacy, but as an artist with his own vision. His performances grew in confidence, his songwriting flourished, and he proved that he had the staying power to survive an industry that often abandoned those caught in controversy. But Bobby did not only express himself through chart-topping hits, he also used his pen to answer the critics who doubted him. One of his most powerful lyrical statements came in "I'm in Love," a song partly inspired by the backlash surrounding his marriage to Barbara. Through its words, he channeled the pain of being misunderstood and the determination to defend his choices, even when the world refused to understand them. Music became his shield and his weapon, allowing him to confront personal struggles in a way that audiences could feel, but not easily dismiss. With each release, Bobby's identity as a musician grew stronger and clearer. He blended gospel roots, soul passion, and rock influences into a sound that was uniquely his own. He no longer needed to lean on Cooke's name to be heard. Instead, he carried Cooke's lessons in phrasing and artistry while building a reputation that could stand alone. By the mid-1970s, Bobby had proven that he was more than the controversies that had haunted him. He had redefined himself as a respected soul man with a distinct voice and a catalog of music that bore his signature. For him, reclaiming his identity was not simply about escaping Sam's shadow or silencing the critics. It was about finally stepping into the spotlight as the man he had always believed he could be. Though Sam's death left their bond clouded in scandal, nothing could ever change the truth of what lay behind it, a connection built on music, trust, and unshakable influence. Beyond friendship and scandal. Despite the controversies that had complicated their bond, Bobby often said he did not think of Sam as gone. "He lives on inside me to some degree," he explained, stressing that the lessons, the encouragement, and the inspiration Sam had given him were so deeply woven into his being that they could never be separated. For Bobby, remembering Sam was not about mourning, but about carrying him forward in every performance, every lyric, and every note of soul music he sang. This lasting connection was clear when Bobby was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2009. Standing before the audience, he reached back to the song that had haunted him since the first time Sam played it for him. "A change is gonna come." Bobby told the crowd, "Sam Cooke did A Change Is Gonna Come 50 years ago. Now change has come. It's a new day. Sam, I want to thank you." His words were not just ceremonial, they were a testimony of gratitude and acknowledgement that Cooke's prophetic song still resonated, both in Bobby's life and in the wider world. In that moment, the scandal of the past gave way to something pure, the recognition of an enduring artistic legacy that transcended personal failures. Looking at Bobby's journey, the relationship with Sam had always been more than a mentor and student dynamic. From the first moment Cooke teased him as a boy opening for the Soul Stirrers, to the way Cooke opened doors for his family through the SAR label, their connection had set Bobby on a path that shaped his identity. Even when scandal threatened to overshadow it, Bobby insisted that nothing could erase the truth of Sam's influence. That influence had taught him how to channel emotion into music, how to respect phrasing and delivery, and how to believe in the possibility of greatness, even when the odds seemed impossible. The connection came full circle as Bobby moved from prodigy to legend himself. He had once been the young boy desperate for a chance to prove himself, and by the end, he was a soul icon whose music touched generations. His reflections showed that the story of his life could not be told without Sam Cooke's name standing alongside his own. The friendship, the scandal, the grief, and the gratitude were all part of a complicated but unbreakable bond. In his later reflections, Bobby no longer ran from that complexity. He accepted that his story with Sam carried pain and controversy, but also triumph and purpose. What mattered most to him was that the essence of Sam's artistry lived on in his work. From gospel beginnings to rock and soul breakthroughs, Bobby's career carried the unmistakable imprint of his mentor. In the end, beyond friendship and scandal, what endured was legacy, what lives intertwined, one continuing to speak for the other long after death. What are your thoughts on their bond and the way it shaped Bobby's life? Share in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective.